conditional statements have special relationships with other types of statement. These relationships are called the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. The converse of an if and then statement may or may not be valid. Because of this, care must be taken when the converse is used in a hypothesis. For example, using the cat again, we said that if it is a cat, then it is a feline. This is true. However, the converse, if it is a feline, then it is a cat, is not necessarily valid because a lion and a tiger are also felines. Now let's try the converse of a triangle statement. If a triangle has 3 equal sides, then it is an equilateral triangle. The converse is valid by saying, if it is an equilateral triangle, then the triangle has 3 equal sides. Notice that in the converse, the if part of the statement becomes the then part, and the then part becomes the if. So far we have talked about statements in a positive sense. For example, if this is so, then this is so and so. However, if we turn the original sentence into a negative, for example, if this is not so, then this is not so and so. This type of negative emphasis on a conditional statement is called either an inverse or a contrapositive. We'll discuss the inverse first and the contrapositive later. Again, using the original cat statement, we would say, if it is a cat, then it is a feline. That is true. Now, in the inverse, we would say, if it is not a cat, then it is not a feline. Notice that the statement seems to be valid, but doesn't have to be, because again, it could be a lion or a tiger, which are felines. Now, using the triangle statement, the inverse is valid. The original statement said, if a triangle has 3 equal sides, then it is an equilateral triangle. Turning it into a negative, we would say, if a triangle doesn't have 3 equal sides, then it is not an equilateral triangle. What this shows is that we must be careful in both the converse and inverse statements, because they may or may not be valid. The last type of statement is the contrapositive, which, again, it is a statement with a negative spin. Before we say anything else, let's establish here the following. A contrapositive statement of a true statement is always true. Now let's see what a contrapositive sounds like. Using the cat statement, the original said, if it is a cat, then it is a feline. Now, the contrapositive is both negative and stated backwards. If it is not a feline, then it is not a cat. Notice how it works. It is valid, always. In a triangle, it also works. If it is not an equilateral triangle, then it does not have 3 equal sides. Okay, let's review conditionals. A conditional statement is an if and then statement that defines a hypothesis. A hypothesis is like a proposal. In the conditional, you also find a conclusion. The hypothesis is the if part, and the conclusion the then part. Once we establish that the conditional is true, we can then state the converse. In the converse, we switch the if and then part. However, the converse of the conditional may or may not be true. Now, next is the inverse. The inverse is the original conditional with a negative spin. Again, like the converse, the inverse may or may not be true. Lastly, we have the contrapositive. The contrapositive also has a negative spin, but like the converse, it is also stated backwards.